injury away from this league going back to pre-2024, not 2023, but everything lower in 2024. Like, we all know this league is nowhere near as culturally right.
The nightmare scenario is obvious, and nobody wants to say it out loud. If the players strike, if games are missed, if the 2025 season is delayed or canceled, the collapse wouldn't be instant. It would be slow and irreversible. Sponsors would quietly pull back. Networks would renegotiate or walk away. The new media deals meant to fund future salaries would lose value or disappear entirely. Small market teams, already operating at a loss, wouldn't survive the disruption. Operations would shut down. Franchises would fold, and the league would enter a death spiral it might never escape. The players believed they could pivot, start a new league, or rely on alternatives. But the data doesn't support that confidence. Unrivaled was supposed to be proof of concept. Instead, it's already struggling. Ratings are weak. Primetime performance is last in key demographics. Despite massive investment, star power, and a TNT deal born of desperation, the audience didn't show up. That's the final brutal truth. Interest in women's basketball exists, but it's fragile, centralized, and dependent on the ecosystem the WNBA provides. Destroy that ecosystem, and there's no guarantee it comes back. This isn't a negotiation anymore. It's a high-stakes gamble where everyone thinks they're holding the winning hand, while standing one misstep away from losing the table entirely.
The league knows it's a problem, but the players, and this is where the kind of lack of professionalism on the player side comes in. Like, they're like reposting stuff about striking. They basically said here, at midnight it expires. Despite demonstrating our willingness to compromise in order to get the deal done, they've shown no willingness. From what we've seen, the players have said
the silence surrounding women's basketball right now is louder than any protest. Turn on sports television. First Take isn't debating WNBA topics anymore. ESPN isn't running highlights of Paige Buecher's dropping 40-plus points. Social media buzz has faded. In January 2025, only one WNBA-related story truly broke through. Caitlin Clark's first unrivaled appearance and speculation about her future. That's it. 6 months ago, the WNBA was everywhere. Today, it's barely present. That should terrify everyone involved, because cultural relevance is far harder to regain than it is to lose. Attention is momentum-based, and momentum doesn't pause, it moves on. Against that backdrop, the Players Association allowed the CBA to expire at midnight on January 31st. No extension, no bridge deal. Instead, they escalated. An inflatable rat outside the NBA store in New York. Social media posts hinting at strikes. Public accusations of bad faith negotiation. Across the table, ownership isn't matching the theatrics. Their response has been cold, calculated, and consistent. One word keeps coming up: unsustainable. That word isn't an insult, it's a warning. Ownership isn't denying growth. They're questioning permanence. They're asking whether the revenue spike of 2024 represents a new baseline or a one-year anomaly driven by a once-in-a-generation player. The players are acting as if the boom is permanent. The league is acting as if it might already be fading. That difference in assumptions explains everything about this standoff. One side is negotiating for a future they believe has already arrived. The other is negotiating as if the peak may already be behind them.
Every bit of leverage they have to get as much money as they can. As long as they don't overplay their hand and the season doesn't happen. Even fuck it. Even if some of the games have to be played in alternate arenas because they're double booked, who cares? At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is that the season happens. The players need to use every bit of leverage. It's a game of chicken that right now the owners are winning. Because
at the heart of this dispute is a structural disagreement, not just a financial one. The Players Association isn't asking for a traditional salary cap with predictable annual increases. They want revenue sharing tied directly to 30% of gross league revenue, a dynamic system that rises and falls with the league's financial performance. In theory, it sounds fair. If the league grows, players benefit. If it struggles, salaries adjust. The problem is that the WNBA isn't built to support that model. Unlike the NBA, the WNBA operates with fragmented ownership. Teams have vastly different cost structures. Some are subsidized heavily. Others operate on razor-thin margins. The league office doesn't control enough centralized revenue to guarantee stability under fluctuating gross revenue system. From ownership's perspective, this isn't about fairness, it's about feasibility. Gross revenue sharing assumes consistent profitability. The WNBA doesn't have that. Some teams lose money even during strong seasons. Others rely on NBA support just to stay afloat. When players use the term pay equity, it resonates emotionally. But financially, it implies a framework the league's current structure cannot sustain. Equity without profitability becomes liability. And ownership knows that once a revenue-sharing model is locked in, it can't be easily undone if projections fall short. This is why the league calls the demand a non-starter. Not because they don't want to pay players more, but because they don't believe the league can survive the volatility that model introduces.
AJ Wilson, Sabrina Ionescu, Brianna Stewart, Nafisa Collier. If this league shuts down, and those 6 or 7 players that I've mentioned, if the league shuts down, and every city that has a team, because yes, there are cities that have fans, every city that has a team starts a breakout league, and every single player in the WNBA, except for those 6 players, doesn't play, and they all play.
This isn't confidence. It's anxiety disguised as bravado. Because the reality nobody wants to say out loud is this. The WNBA is one Caitlin Clark injury away from sliding straight back into irrelevance. That's not exaggeration. That's the uncomfortable truth shaping every move in these collective bargaining negotiations. The league's recent surge wasn't organic, gradual growth. It was concentrated, fragile, and heavily dependent on a handful of stars, with Clark at the center of it all. Over the past year, the WNBA didn't just gain fans. It borrowed momentum. Media attention sold out arenas, and viral moments created the illusion of stability. But illusions don't survive disruption. And that's why both sides are now locked in the most dangerous standoff the league has ever seen. This isn't just about money. It's about who blinks first when the stakes are existential. The players believe this is their moment to extract long overdue gains. Ownership believes this is the exact wrong moment to gamble with the league's survival. Both sides are convinced they're right. And both sides are ignoring how thin the margin for error actually is. If Caitlin Clark goes down tomorrow, the league doesn't collapse instantly, but the oxygen disappears. National coverage evaporates. Casual fans drift away. Networks quietly shift focus. And suddenly, the leverage players think they doesn't exist anymore. Everyone involved knows this, even if they won't admit it publicly. That's why this negotiation feels different. It's not tense because of hostility. It's tense because everyone understands how close the edge really is. One wrong move doesn't just cost money. It risks undoing the most momentum the league has ever had.
Everybody knows this isn't a case of, is there going to be a 2026 season? This is a case of, is this league going to exist or not? And who has more to lose by this league not existing? And I think the players have more to lose. That's just my opinion. I think the players should hold out. I think the players, they don't like what they get, they should hold out. They should absolutely hold out. No question about it. Get as much as you can get. Get every cent until...
This moment isn't about confidence or empowerment. It's about fear, quiet, calculated fear, on both sides of the table. Because beneath every public statement and protest sign lies an uncomfortable truth. The WNBA's recent surge is far more fragile than anyone wants to admit. The league is one major Caitlin Clark injury away from losing the attention it spent decades trying to earn. That reality, more than any moral argument, is what's driving the most dangerous collective bargaining standoff in league history. Just 6 months ago, women's basketball felt unavoidable. Highlights dominated social feeds, arenas were packed, and national conversations followed every major game. Today, that momentum has thinned dramatically. Sports television has moved on. Major shows aren't debating WNBA storylines. Historic performances from stars like Paige Bueckers barely register outside dedicated fan circles. The only storyline that cut through national noise in early 2025 revolved around Caitlin Clark, her unrivaled debut and speculation about her future. When a league's visibility collapses that quickly, it signals how shallow its margin for error truly is. Against this backdrop, the Players Association allowed the collective bargaining agreement to expire. Not quietly, but defiantly. Public protests, symbolic gestures, and strike rhetoric were meant to signal leverage. The league's response, however, has been notably restrained. Ownership keeps returning to one word: unsustainable. Not as an insult, but as a warning. The league isn't denying growth. It's questioning whether that growth represents a stable foundation or a temporary spike driven by a few exceptional stars. That difference in perspective defines this conflict. Players are negotiating as if the boom is permanent. Ownership is negotiating as if the peak may already be fading. At the core of the dispute is revenue sharing. Players want compensation tied directly to a percentage of gross league revenue rather than a capped salary structure with predictable annual increases. Philosophically, it sounds fair. If the league grows, players benefit immediately. But structurally, the WNBA isn't built to support that model. Unlike the NBA, the league operates with fragmented ownership, uneven profitability, and heavy reliance on external subsidies. Some teams generate revenue, others bleed money annually. The league office simply doesn't control enough centralized income to guarantee stability under a fluctuating gross revenue system. That's why ownership views the demand as a non-starter, not because they oppose higher pay, but because volatility could break the league entirely if projections miss. Once a revenue-sharing model is locked in, it can't be reversed without chaos. And chaos is the one thing this league cannot afford. Meanwhile, both sides are playing a dangerous game of chicken. Players accuse the league of bad faith negotiations while refusing to compromise. Ownership, in turn, understands a brutal business truth few want to confront. Only a small number of players actually drive league-wide interest. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Paige Buchers, Sabrina Ionescu, Brianna Stewart, Aya Vilson, Nafisa Collier. Beyond that tier, individual market value drops sharply. For most franchises, fans show up for the brand, the city, and the logo, not the roster. Entire teams could change without affecting attendance or ratings. Ownership knows this, and it shapes their willingness to wait. They believe the players need the league more than the league needs any single player outside that elite few. The nightmare scenario is obvious. If players strike, if games are canceled, if the 2025 season collapses, the fallout wouldn't be immediate, but it would be devastating. Sponsors would pull back. Media partners would renegotiate or walk away. Smaller market teams would shut down. And the ecosystem sustaining women's professional basketball would fracture. Alternatives already exist, and they're failing. Unrivaled, despite massive investment and star power, has struggled to attract consistent viewership. Hottingslag, prime-time numbers disappoint. The idea that a replacement league could absorb the WNBA's audience simply isn't supported by data. This isn't just a labor dispute anymore. It's an existential gamble. Everyone involved believes they're protecting the future. But the margin between progress and collapse has never been thinner. One miscalculation doesn't just cost money. It risks undoing the most momentum women's basketball has ever had.